The following podcast is for the sole purpose of entertainment and at no time represents an attorney-client relationship or legal advice from the hostess or her guests. For legal advice, please contact an attorney in your area. Welcome to Winning at Divorce. Please join our hostess as she welcomes guests to sit down with a favorite beverage and take a look at the many circumstances, stages, and processes of divorce and provide empowering anecdotes and tips to assist you in winning back your life. Our beautiful and talented hostess, Michelle Gregory, is a practicing Indiana divorce attorney, mediator, entrepreneur, and coach. For more information about her services, go to www.hmichellegregory.com. So pull up a seat, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. And now, without further ado, here is the hostess of Winning at Divorce, Michelle Gregory.
Hi, and welcome to Winning at Divorce. I'm your hostess, Michelle Gregory. And fortunately today, for our second episode of our very first season, Winning at Divorce, I have my good friend here, Stephen Douglas. Say hello, Stephen.
Hello, everyone.
And I want to say thank you very much for my guests and for my listeners for being with us today and taking time out from your busy day to come hang out with us today. So you should be working today, right? Because this is a work day.
It is. It's a work day, and this is part of the job.
This is part of your job. Okay.
Sharing information is part of what lawyers do.
So what you do right now is you're an estate planner.
That's probably about 70% of my practice, yes.
Okay. And what other part of your practice?
Well, going back to my past, I still do a little criminal defense work.
Okay.
I don't focus on that. I also do quite a bit in the way of contracts and business startups.
Okay.
It all kind of melds together and getting not only the individual but the business set up properly so that when things come their way that they don't anticipate, they're ready for it.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's very important. So before we get into all of the things that you've been doing, because you have an amazing story, and I look forward to our listeners hearing all about my friend, Stephen. But usually here at Winning at Divorce, we always start out with a toast. So if you'd like, we'll start out with a quick toast. And today I've chosen pomegranate juice for my friend. So we'll toast to our friendship, because we've been friends for a long time, and to the new podcast, and to all the listeners out there. Anything you want to add?
Success.
Success to everything. Yes, thank you. Oh, that's actually good.
That is good.
You know, I was thinking about doing wine, but in the middle of the day like this.
Probably not a good idea because I have to go back to the office.
I have to too. I've got some work to do myself. It's a little tart though, isn't it? All right. So thank you, everybody, again. And, you know, one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on here, Stephen, is because no one likes to talk about dying.
That's an understatement. Yeah.
Dying is one of those nasty things that no one wants to talk about. And, you know, between dying, divorce, and taxes, those are kind of the three no-nos everyone is uncomfortable with. But when you're going through divorce, dying is pretty important, and having an estate plan is really relevant to the situation. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why I wanted to have you on today. But before we get into all the details of what estate planning is, because I know you're going to explain that to us today, can you give us a little bit of background on you, your experiences, and tell us about your life? So where were you born?
I was actually born in Beech Grove, Indiana, St. Francis Hospital, the old one. My parents had moved there from Tennessee after my dad got out of the service in Korea. And so my sister and I were born at St. Francis Hospital, delivered by Dr. John Wedefield, who used to do house calls. I'll never forget that.
Oh, my gosh. Really? House calls?
Well, that's how old I am.
Oh, stop.
Doctors still used to do house calls.
You barely have any gray in your beard.
That's because I shaved a lot of it off before I come in. Anyway.
Okay.
But anyway, make a long story short, both sides of the family were from Tennessee, lived in Sumner County, which is the county immediately north of Davidson County, which is where Nashville is located. Mm-hmm. So early 1970s, they decided to move back there. And so we moved down there, and that's really where school started for me. And my sister was still too young to go to school. And we had a farm. It was part of the family land holdings down there in a little place called Bethpage.
Bethpage?
Bethpage, yes.
Oh, cool.
And if you can find it on a map, you are really good, because
it's teeny tiny.
It's teeny tiny. So we lived there, had a home on Old Hickory Lake, just off Lock 4, started in Gallatin schools, or Sumner County schools, and everything was going well. And then in 1976, February 4th specifically,
Well, you're good with dates. Wow.
Yeah, a neighbor picked us up from school, which was unusual. Said there'd been some things going on, and so we went to the house, and my mom came in supported by her parents, and they told me my father had passed away that afternoon.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So anyway, we did the best we could. We lived there for several more years. My mom remarried. That's how I wound up in Bloomington, although I still consider Gallatin to be my hometown. And most of my extended family. My dad was second of 11 children.
Oh, wow.
And there's a debate on exactly how many first cousins there were.
Well, it's Tennessee, you know.
Let's just say in the high 20s. So most of those folks still live in that area. And so I get back down there as often as I can.
Nice.
But anyway, graduated from Bloomington High School North, went to Indiana University, studied in the School of Education, focuses on history, government, those types of things, and found out it was very difficult to get a job as a teacher in the 1980s. And so did various things, and finally became a federal training consultant and went back to law school. I have 3 biological children and then a couple girls I raised in the meantime. And
was that like through foster care or family?
Actually, no. My daughters just would bring people home, and they never left.
Like stray kittens, huh?
Kind of, yeah. I'm very proud of both of them. Jessica is a registered nurse. She's a NICU nurse up at Riley in Indianapolis.
Nice.
I have 2 nurses in the family. My youngest daughter, Rebecca, who will be 25, her birthday, is a nurse here at Bloomington Hospital. So anyway, so my 3 biological kids, my 2 kids of my heart, and they're all pretty much grown and gone now. The only one still in school is my son. He graduates this coming year. So
wow, no grandchildren yet?
I do. I have 1 grandchild and 1 on the way.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So
good for you.
Yeah. So went back to law school. Graduated the last year. I was a certified legal intern in the prosecutor's office in Greene County, and got very familiar with the methamphetamine problem.
Oh my gosh! And it's just gotten worse.
Oh yeah. Make a long story short, took the bar exam, was convinced I didn't pass it, did pass it, and the very next day when I went into work, I was sworn in as a deputy. It was a lot of fun there. I think there were 16 attorneys in the entire county.
Oh, wow.
So everybody knew each other very, very well.
How long were you there?
A couple years.
A couple years.
And then opportunity opened up with the state, and so I went to Indianapolis. Became a deputy attorney general and focused on medical licensing litigation. So I prosecuted doctors, dentists, nurses, according to the Practice Act. It was a neat time, a good opportunity. I got to go up against some really high-profile attorneys here in Indiana, and so that was good experience. And still lived here. My kids went to Richland Bean Blossom Schools, Ellettsville, Edgewood. I was at a football game one night, and a friend of mine whom I'd known since high school, who's also an attorney, said, "Hey, have you ever thought about going into private practice?" Well, no, not really. You know, I kind of like that steady paycheck.
Yeah, that's nice. And the benefits. And
he said, well, I've got some office space I'll let you have for cheap. So I didn't give it much thought. And then it just seemed like a domino effect over the next 3 or 4 months.
Kind of like it meant to be.
Yeah. And so started the practice, learned that it's a lot easier to talk about being in private practice than doing it.
Yes.
Because you're now not only a lawyer, but you're a business manager and everything else.
Exactly.
So I've been doing that now for 14 years, and the practice has evolved since then. And I'm no longer in Ellettsville. I'm actually have an office here in Bloomington. But things are going well. Kids are growing up. Life's pretty good right now.
So if someone wanted to reach you, do you have an email or a
I do.
Website?
I do not have a website. I do have one under construction.
Okay.
I'm something of a curmudgeon and maybe a Luddite. I am not a big fan of technology, and the reason is I can touch a computer and it just starts.
That's not your thing.
It's just
so then how would someone reach you if they wanted to?
The best way would be by phone, which is 812-369-4435.
Okay.
Or you could reach me via email, which is sdouglaslaw@gmail.com. Those are the two best ways right now. I do have a Facebook page now.
Good for you. See, you're technique. Look at you. Social media even.
That's fairly recent. My paralegal was making fun of me, and I actually got tired of being made fun of. And the first 3 friend requests I had, because I set up a personal page and then an office page, were from my biological kids. Hey, it's about time. You got
to start somewhere.
Got to start somewhere. So I'm finding I am embracing technology a little bit more. We've all had to, because we've gone to e-file. And,
yes. Oh, God, please don't get me started on that.
But, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different life being an attorney. I still teach, have taught at Ivy Tech for, I think it's about 35 semesters, something like that.
Oh, my gosh.
Paralegal studies, criminal justice, those types of things.
Wonderful.
And, my actual paralegal is a former student of mine, and does a good job. And
they have a paralegal program over there, too, as well.
Yes, they do. And they've trained some good ones there. Mm-hmm. They're really good people.
Mm-hmm. So I heard a lot of great things about your life. One thing you didn't mention, are you divorced?
I am.
Okay. Can you tell us what it's like? I mean, because for attorneys who've never been divorced, sometimes they don't really understand what that means and what someone needs out of an attorney. So how has being divorced helped you be a better attorney for someone going through divorce?
Well, the first thing that I would tell people is take a deep breath. Mm-hmm. And nobody, I think, is ever really prepared to hear those words. And I certainly was not, but it happened. Mm-hmm. The other thing that once you take that deep breath, I think you need to be realistic. For an attorney, obviously I have some understanding of the law. Family law is really not my focus. But I understand that you need someone that has that type of expertise.
Right.
So the first thing that I did was get in touch with an attorney.
Get that professional involved.
Exactly. So that, my rights would be protected, because it's a very emotional time. You mentioned death a little bit ago. Nobody likes to think about dying.
Nope.
Nobody wants to see someone they love die.
Right.
It's a very emotional time, and it's not the time to make decisions, just on a whim.
Right.
So I needed somebody to guide me through that, somebody that could look at things objectively, and I knew somebody that would be on my side. So,
right.
Yeah.
So you reached out and got your professional.
Sure did.
Started building your winning team.
That's right.
Right. And what would Stephen today tell the Stephen who was getting divorced? What kind of tips would you give yourself of things you should have done or differently?
I think that the Stephen today would probably tell the Stephen back then that listen more to what your attorney has to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be good.
The emotional aspect of it is hard to separate oneself from. And I think that sometimes we make decisions based on those emotions, or just wanting to get get everything over with, and your attorney's saying, hey, wait a minute, let's take a step back here. And of course, you know as well as I do, it's the client's case.
Right, of course.
So I think that the first thing that Stephen today would tell Stephen back then is, let your attorney handle it. That's
follow their advice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you were going through your divorce, did you have an estate plan in place at the time?
I did.
You did. And did you do it yourself, or did you have another attorney do it for you?
No, I actually did it myself.
You did it for yourself. And you felt that was important.
Very important.
Yeah, very important. And before we go to our next episode, our next segment, you told me a funny story that I think the last time you and I had lunch.
Yep.
About when you made the decision to go from practicing at the AG's office to private practice. And I thought that was a great story to kind of tell a little bit about your integrity and your character and how much what a great attorney you were by the response that you got from some of the people you had gone up against.
Oh, the Jim Voyle story.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, for the listener, the Jim Voiles, if you think about Voiles, you think about the Mike Tyson defense team, you think of Jim Irsay's attorney and all of that wonderful stuff. And this is all out there. I'm not revealing anything about Jim, but Jim was a guy I had several cases against when I was with the AG's office, and we got along really well. So I had actually decided to leave the AG's office. I was technically on vacation, but I was heading up to Fort Wayne on my first private case, and my phone rings and I look down and it's Voiles. I'm thinking, what on earth is going on?
And he's usually your opponent.
Yeah, he's usually my opponent. And I pick up the phone and, he always called me pal. He said, hey pal, it's Jim. And I said, Voiles, what's going on? And he said, I just heard a nasty rumor. And I said, what's that? And he said, I hear you're leaving the AG's office. And I said, well, I'm not really sure who let that cat out of the bag, but it's true. And he said, I'm sure that you're going to have a lot of the other attorneys up here in Indianapolis call and tell you that they're going to miss you and everything like that. But he said, I, for one, you son of a bitch, I'm glad to see you go. So he
didn't want to go up against you anymore.
So I told him later, I sit on the Solo Small Firm Committee with the State Bar Association, and I believe it was annual conference. One year Jim was speaking, and I went up to him. I sat in on his session, and I told him then, I said, I've never received a compliment that meant more to me than what you said that day.
Yeah.
And he just laughed about it. But no, I think that's one of the great things about our little world is you can develop rivalries, but they sharpen you.
Yes.
They definitely sharpen you. So.
Well, it's when your opponent is coming at you. You got to figure out, how am I going to beat this?
Exactly.
Right? And that is such a funny story. And I loved it when you told me before, because it's so true to who you are as a person, because I've known you for several years now, and you've been nothing but a good person and honest, trustworthy person.
Well, thank you.
And so it's one of the reasons why I want to have you on today, because I know you're trustworthy.
I appreciate that.
And since you've shared your past and your history, and next we're going to get into talking a little bit more detail about what is estate planning and try to get into the basics and what people need to do and why they need to do it and why it's relevant to them during a divorce. But first, of course, first we have to have a break and hear from our sponsor. So I'm Michelle Gregory, and I'm here with Stephen Douglas, and we'll be right back, so don't leave.
Thank you for listening to Winning at Divorce with your hostess, Michelle Gregory. This is not a breakup, it's just a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages from our generous sponsors.
Divorce is the most emotional and stressful time in anyone's life. And it is a global phenomenon that stretches across most cultures and backgrounds. Hi, I'm your Winning at Divorce coach, Michelle Gregory, as well as a divorce attorney, mediator, and entrepreneur. My coaching clients come to me to bridge the gap between their attorney and their therapist. As a divorce coach, I can assist you with planning, preparing, and winning at divorce. As Zig Ziglar once said, you were born to win, but to be a winner, you must plan to win, prepare to win, and expect to win. For more detailed information, visit hmichellegregory.com or call me at 812-339-3600 to get started on your journey towards winning at divorce.
Welcome back to Winning at Divorce, and thank you for staying tuned in with us. Don't forget to check out our website at www.hmichellegregory.com. And once again, here's our fabulous hostess, Michelle Gregory.
Welcome back. I'm your hostess, Michelle Gregory with Winning at Divorce, and we've had a great first segment talking to my good friend, Stephen Douglas, who gave us his life history, which is fascinating, and some great funny stories and tips. But now, Stephen, I think it's important that we really dive into what estate planning is and why it's so important to talk about death and taxes and divorce simultaneously as you are either planning a divorce, going through the divorce, or you're through the divorce. So can you start us off with what are the basics of estate planning?
Well, when we start with basics of estate planning, I think the first thing is a will.
Yeah.
A last will and testament. Now, I get this question a lot. Well, I really don't have anything. Why do I need a will? Well, I liken estate planning to having life insurance. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's not so much about you, but those that are still left when you go.
Right.
So when we talk about estate planning, we're talking about how one person decides they want their assets to be distributed after they're gone. Mm-hmm. So you start with a basic will. Another thing that we do in estate planning is we try to take care of the here and now as well. In my estimation, everybody needs a good general durable power of attorney in case something happens. They need the appointment of a healthcare representative, mm-hmm. A living will declaration, and then I also do a HIPAA release for a lot of my clients because people don't seem to understand that, HIPAA would restrict even a spouse getting the medical records given
right.
Circumstances.
Yeah, those laws are pretty strict now.
They are. So when we sit down with somebody, we just basically say, what do you want to have happen mm-hmm. when you're gone? And we listen. And so we sit down, we jot things down. We do a draft of the will, and then we meet with the client again. And we go over what we have. I give them, this is kind of a teachery thing in me. I sit them down in my conference room. I give them a draft of their will, and I give them a red pen. Mm-hmm. And I say, mark it up, just go nuts, because we want to make sure we get it, the way that they want it, right. as long as it, is within the bounds of what the law says a will must have.
Now, someone who has no clue what a will is, mm-hmm. and they're looking at it with that red pen, they don't really know what they're looking at. So what are some of the components in a will that are really important for them to know and understand? Well,
there's the first thing. It starts out with a declaration. I, your name, mm-hmm. being of sound mind and disposing memory.
Which is very important.
Very important. Do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. To do these kinds of things, you obviously have to be of sound mind.
Right.
Or in the law, we say capacity.
Explain what that is.
Capacity means that you have the wherewithal mentally mm-hmm. to make a reasoned decision. Mm-hmm. That's the layman's way of putting it. It can get fuzzier, as you well know.
So it needs to be done for someone who has dementia or something like that.
And that's one thing that we run into sometimes. Yeah. People will call me up, Dad is 88 years old. He has Alzheimer's, but he doesn't have a will. Well, Dad probably needed to address this 20 years ago, right. but we'll bring them in. We'll talk to them. If we think that it's borderline, that a person does not understand what they're doing at that moment, mm-hmm. then we will ask to have a neurologist do an eval and let us know. And
then the doctor can let you know whether or not they can sign it and it count and be valid.
And I've done will signings in a hospital. In hospice, literally. Mm-hmm. And, people, as long as they're lucid, as long as they understand what they're signing, mm-hmm. generally that will do it because we do an attestation, and then we also have the witnesses there.
Right.
And the witnesses have to attest that the person was of sound mind.
And so who are the best witnesses?
The best witnesses are the ones I provide.
Oh.
I don't use family members, and I don't typically allow the client to bring in friends.
Okay.
For one very simple reason. A person who might challenge the will can always point a finger and say, well, you're going to say that because you were his friend.
Right, of course.
So usually it's my office staff, and depending on how iffy I think the situation may be, if I've been informed that I have a troublesome child that may rear their head in years to come, we will record video.
Like video?
Yep. And we will also, I always call this bringing in the big guns. I'll actually have maybe 2 other attorneys that will come and do the witnessing.
Oh, that's nice.
Or I'll have, if it's a medical condition, I'll have a nurse or something come in and do that.
Good, yeah.
The point is they're non-attached to the testator or the testatrix.
Right. So there's no reason that they would play favoritism or anything like that.
There's no reason why they'd lie.
Right. So why don't you explain to them how the will works and why it's important? Because, it's passing on property to certain folks. Kind of explain how that works.
Well, basically, when you die, you have an estate.
Right.
It can be a big estate, it can be a small estate. But if you have any kind of item at all, you technically have an estate. Okay? And the will is basically there to delineate how you want that estate to be dispersed. Generally, and this is really kind of more in your bailiwick when we talk about couples, most spouses will say, I leave everything to my spouse.
Right. And that's called the lover's will or something like that, where it's, I leave it to you and you leave it to me.
Lover's
reciprocity. We love
reciprocity.
each other forever.
Absolutely. So we see a lot of that, but then you have children.
Right.
And eventually, unless there's a simultaneous death, one of those spouses is going to have pretty much everything. But then you have the kids. Or you don't have kids. You have to decide how the property is going to be dispersed. You get a lot of misconceptions from people, and they believe that just because dad died, I get it.
Right. And I want it all.
Yeah.
I get it all.
If I didn't have a will and I died today, if I died what we call intestate, without a will, my children would not inherit all of my estate.
Right.
Because I have a living mother.
Right.
And she would get a claim on the estate because of the tables of consanguinity. But that's getting maybe just a tad too technical.
Well, if we have time later, we'll touch base on that a little bit more. So tell us what beneficiaries are.
Beneficiaries are the people that are ultimately going to get your stuff.
Right.
That's just the simple way of putting it. A lot of wills divide stuff, your belongings, into 2 groups. We have items of personality. That would be like a ring, jewelry, a car, a watch, something like that. And then you have residuary items, which would be cash, stocks, bonds, real estate. There are a lot of times that a mother or father may have like a ring that was handed down from grandma or grandpa.
Right, an heirloom.
Yeah, and they want that to go to a specific child.
And they can they name someone in a will?
Absolutely.
So my ruby ring goes to my great-grandchild. Okay.
And I'll just give you an example from my own will. I have my great-grandfather's pocket watch. Yeah, and my mom, years ago, before she actually gave it to me, took it to Victor Subtle here in town, and they spent about a year on it, and they took it completely apart, refurbished it. It is completely original. There are no replacement parts. The thing keeps time like nobody's business. It's just, it's beautiful. But obviously, I want that to go to someone within my blood lineal descent.
Right, and who's also going to care for it.
Exactly.
So you want to make sure it goes to the right person.
So that's delineated specifically in the will. When we get to residuary stuff, I just say put it in a big lump and divide it equally between the kids.
Well, what about trusts?
There are all sorts of trusts.
Okay.
You can have special needs trust if you have a child that maybe has a disability or something along those lines. There are the most common trusts that we see out there are what they call living trust or revocable living trust. There are irrevocable trust. And then there's a thing called a testamentary trust, which is the trust is actually contained in the body of the will.
Oh, okay.
And for people that don't have vast sums of money, but they do have minor children, sometimes that's the best way to go. It's certainly less expensive. It's the way I went when I drafted my will. Of course, all my kids have attained their majority now, so I don't have need for a trust or
But someone who's
guardianship.
Divorcing with small children.
Absolutely. And, another thing about a will, and you mentioned that, and that's good that you mentioned it because, if a spouse dies and they're married, the other spouse is going to get custody.
Right.
If there is a divorce, obviously there's going to be some type of custody settlement that comes down from the court. But what happens if, that surviving spouse or one of those spouses die, and the other spouse is gone?
Or there is some sort of limitation on their parenting time.
Exactly.
They have supervised parenting time. And it's already been assumed by the court that this person's not fit to even have their children alone.
Then you need a guardianship in the will.
Right. And you can build that in.
Absolutely.
So that is in the will or is that in the trust?
That could be in the will.
Okay.
Okay. The trust is more to distribute assets and to really what a trust is, other than preserving assets, it's kind of a way to control money beyond the grave.
Right.
Is why most people use them. But a lot of times I'll tell people because trusts they can be fairly expensive to draft.
Oh, okay.
And if a person, does not have a vast estate, it's a lot of times better to maybe look at doing something in the will itself.
But if someone has minor children and you have a trust or you have property, you can put it in that trust. And you can designate that when they're a certain age, they can get this for college or for a car or for a wedding. So there's a lot of things that people can do to disperse that money to support or to assist them in the future, right?
Oh, absolutely. And another thing that does, and this isn't an insult to anybody's kids, but teenagers sometimes don't consider the ramifications.
What? Teenagers? They don't?
Of having, big sums of money dumped into their lap at once.
Yes. And one of the problems, too, is it doesn't always, if they're right under the age, guess where it goes?
Yeah.
It goes to your ex.
Yeah.
That person that you was warring with, that you're angry with, that you divorced. Next thing you know, they're in control of that $500,000 or $100. It doesn't matter. They're the one making the decisions for that child because they're only 17.
Yeah, and one thing that we do advise people if we have that scenario is, I usually ask the question, do you have life insurance or something like that? Well, yes. Well, who are the named beneficiaries? So we deal with that issue, but sometimes I tell them we'll create a trust and we'll just say dump those funds into the trust. And then the trustee whom you choose, and it's probably not going to be your ex.
Hopefully not. Very rare, I would say.
But the trustee will then distribute the funds. We do see sometimes, legal contest over that because if you do have an ex and it was particularly nasty, they're going to want to control the funds.
Right, they're controlling.
But if it's in the
war
but if it's in the trust, the trustee controls it.
And how does someone select the right trustee or executor or whichever one it is they need?
The first thing that I tell people, it needs to be someone that you can depend on and trust because it's a fiduciary relationship, which is, at law, that's as high as it gets.
So explain to those who are not lawyers what fiduciary relationship is.
It's a special relationship of trust, dependability. I'm trying to think of the right word. But really, trust is what it is. It's a person that you can, put things into their hands and you understand and they understand what to do with them. And they're not going to self-deal. They're not going to be able to be bribed or anything along those lines.
And so who's a good candidate for that?
A good candidate, it varies from person to person.
I've seen people, they're lawyers, they're family members. And
in the case of a trust that's designed to hold funds, let's say for a minor child, it may be a financial advisor that the parent particularly trust. The thing that I always tell people, it doesn't necessarily have to be a family member. And I get this a lot. Well, such and such and so will be insulted if I don't name them. My response is let them be insulted. We're talking about your future, your children's future.
Right.
And
you're gone anyway.
Exactly.
So if they're mad at you, that's their problem, isn't it?
Well, I named my sister, for example, and it was nothing against my kids. I love my kids. They're smart, a lot smarter than their old man, I think sometimes. But the thing that I always tell them is my sister has known me a lot longer than you, and I know that she will act in your best interest on my behalf.
Which is critical.
And that is the thing.
Yeah.
Name a person that's going to act in the best interest of the people that you leave behind.
Exactly.
In the case of minor children, guardian is huge. Trustee is huge. You just can't overemphasize how important it is.
And if you're going through a divorce, you definitely, the laws in Indiana are different than the laws in some other states. And in some states, you can change things during the divorce, and some you have to wait to that final decree. And what is the law here in Indiana?
Well, the thing that I tell people is if you're divorcing, in Indiana, you have to understand you cannot disinherit a surviving spouse.
And you're not divorced yet until you're divorced.
You're not divorced until we get that final dissolution decree.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes depending on the circumstances, and it's different from client to client.
And state to state.
Yeah. And we just tell people, let's see what we get first of all. And then let's make some changes. And I do have a little story if we've got a minute.
We got a minute? Okay, Wes says we got a minute.
Yeah, I had a client, he called me up and he said, I've got this friend, and friend has cancer, and he's dying, he's in hospice, and he said he had a will that left everything to his wife. But he and his wife have been separated, and it was almost 2 decades.
Oh, my gosh.
They had never filed for dissolution.
Wow. Okay.
And this gentleman's sister had taken care of him throughout his illness, and he had a reasonably substantial estate. So he wanted to change the will. He knew he didn't have enough time to divorce his wife because he was that close to death. But he did want to at least give his sister something for all her dedication. So we actually went to hospice. I took my paralegal, and I had another witness with me. We had drafted the document and everything, looked it over. We were going to come back, and lo and behold, he goes comatose on us.
Oh, my gosh.
And his mother and sister were just desperate. They said, well, can we put a pen in his hand and sign for him? And I
don't think that'll work.
I said, not in this circumstance, no.
Yeah.
But I gave him my cell phone number, which isn't something I usually do. And I said, if he comes to, I can be here in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
All right. He never came to. And
gosh.
The woman that he had been separated from for almost 2 decades got every penny.
Everything, because they were still married and the will hadn't been changed.
Exactly. So, when you start something like that, I would encourage people to finish it.
Yes.
You're not, in this case, a sister that had dedicated years to his care wound up getting nothing. And I don't think she was doing it to make a bunch of money, but she certainly deserved it. And because of the animosity there, no.
So it's never too late to update and keep your will current.
Everybody should review their will at least every 5 years. When you get to age 60, you need to look at it every year.
Okay. Well, you know what? This has gone by really fast, this segment.
Okay.
So I think we need to take a quick break. This is Michelle Gregory. I'm the host of Winning at Divorce, and my very good friend Stephen Douglas is here, and we'll be right back. And like they used to say on Batman, don't change that bat channel.
Thank you for listening to Winning at Divorce with your hostess, Michelle Gregory. This is not a breakup, it's just a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages from our generous sponsors.
Hello, I'm Michelle Gregory, your Winning at Divorce coach. Divorce is the most difficult and challenging time in a person's life. Regardless as to whether the divorce is your idea or not, the process can be very frightening, stressful, and overwhelming. You don't have to go through it alone. A divorce coach can assist you whether you just need a support person to vent or help you to identify your desires, set your goals, make plans to achieve your goals, implement your plans, or direct you to the right professionals so that you can win at divorce. For more information regarding how my coaching services can help you, visit hmichellegregory.com or call me at 812-339-3600 to get started on your journey towards winning at divorce.
Welcome back to Winning at Divorce, and thank you for staying tuned in with us. Don't forget to check out our website at www.hmichellegregory.com. And once again, here's our fabulous hostess, Michelle Gregory.
And we're back for our very third segment, maybe last, but I was just talking to Stephen during the break, and he has so much great information. We may do a fourth. So we'll just see how this goes, right? So we're just winging it here today. We had a great segment a while ago learning all about trusts and wills and why it's important for you to update and do that during the divorce. And so you mentioned to me on the break that there were some other really significant things that I should share with our listeners about divorce and estate planning.
Sure.
Oh, wait a minute. Somebody's here. Oh my gosh. Look who we got a surprise visitor. Who could that be?
This is kind of amazing. I
Come
walk
on
in here. I was stopping by my office here.
Look at here, my neighbor, Andrew.
Hi, I knew something was going on because I got an official summons to my office, and I thought I should at least read it out loud here because it came from the office of Steve Douglas. It has the state seal. It's very official, as you can see. And the purpose of the summons was as follows. It's a check one of the following. Do you like me? Yes, no, or maybe. And if there's one thing I've learned in life is if an attorney sends you something this formal, you show up for it.
There you go.
Better, right?
So
I think you would definitely say he likes you.
I would hope. Well, I would have to say yes, but I probably should consult with my attorney first, which happens to be Steve Douglas. How about that for a plug? So, so introduce yourself. Yes. Hi. Well, my name is Andrew Lambert. I am the podcast master of Mind Your Business. I am also her neighbor and a marketing guru here in town. And this is a surprise witness, if you will, for Steve Douglas, who's represented me and my company over the last 10 years. And when I heard he was coming in, I said, don't tell him. We're going to embarrass him, and I'm going to give a testimonial. I think it's working. This is the quietest I've seen this man in some time. So,
don't you love Friends?
Yeah, you took me aback.
Well, you sent me that. I told you. It's an official summons. So.
That's right. That's right. You never did answer them.
No, I didn't. I thought I had to do it on camera. So
he's a great guy. I would encourage you to like him a lot.
Well, Andrew said he had great, wonderful things to say about you and wanted to share them with our listeners.
He's very kind.
And so you just said that Stephen is your attorney.
He is. Yes.
So that's out there. So I can talk about that.
Absolutely.
And so how did Stephen assist you? Now, you went through a divorce, right?
I did. 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, I went through a life transition. What I like to say is I upsized my life by downsizing my weight. Oh, I can't. I'm sorry. We'll have to edit that out.
Okay.
But no, we went through it, and Steve has known me for the better part of probably 12 or more years since I've been here, and it's helped me not only on the personal side, but also on my business side. And when that transaction or transition was happening in my life, I went back to him and said, hey, there's a few things that we need to protect. One is Lambert Consulting and the work I'm doing there, but also my personal side. You know, as soon as those papers became finalized with the court, the question became, what are you going to do about your will? What are you going to do about any of those joint assets? Where are we going to move you in terms of some sort of form of protection if something should happen.
Which is critical. We were just talking about that, how important it is that you update your will once you're divorced and make sure that your assets are going to your children and not your ex-wife.
That's right. And what was interesting about my scenario is that I was actually about to fly out to the northwest to the Seattle area to see family in the middle of December when we were having snowstorms. So Steve got on the phone with me and said, hey, if there's a better time, I can't think of it, to have you come in and actually redo some of that paperwork in the off chance something happens, because I was flying from here through Denver, because why not in December go through Denver and the Rocky Mountains to get up to Seattle? So
you also probably go down to Florida in the middle of July, don't you?
Once in a while. That's because I bought some swampland down there and I'm waiting for it to pay off, and it hasn't yet, but one of these days. So, but yeah, so when you and I first started talking, I said, man, this guy really has helped position me in a way that I don't know if other attorneys would. My assumption is they would, but I've seen it firsthand, and I said, I have to come in and put this on the record. So.
Yeah, and we appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate it very, very much. And again, congratulations to Andrew, newlywed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Jumping in again.
So can we, I know we're supposed to be doing wine and divorce or whatever, but can we talk a little bit about the married side? Because
I'd love to.
Here we are 5 years removed from the divorce, and now I'm positioned with a new marriage.
Yes.
And the first thing I did was go to Steve with my bride-to-be and say, hey, let's have a long discussion, probably better part of 3 months, of what does a prenuptial agreement look like.
Right.
And what it is. And I, between Steve and my wife, Megan, it was an interesting walking backwards, meaning let's start with the assumption you're going your separate ways, that there's another divorce that's potential.
And a lot of people don't feel comfortable doing that, but it's very smart. It's very intelligent. It's a good thing.
And it wasn't like we left his office feeling warm and fuzzy, because you are sitting on different sides of, you're defending yourself. And I want to be, this is not a Steve Douglas thing, I'm just saying in general, these are purposely developed, uncomfortable conversations. Because if you're not willing to have it with your attorney up front, you're going to have it at some point if it doesn't go well.
You're going to have it with your attorney later, and it's going to cost you a whole lot more.
That's exactly right. And so what Steve has been able to do was make sure that, what Meg and I wanted, and I think what a lot of couples want, is, should this not work out, I want to be able to take my toys and go home, and she wants to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes the courts, depending on the state, don't always abide by the 50-50 rule, right? So it comes down to this.
It's what's fair and equitable.
That's exactly right. And that comes down, as Steve had pointed out during my divorce, the eyes of either the attorneys or the judge that's in the matter, and how does that break down? So for me, I've gotten to watch him do both sides of the program. Here where it's, okay, I'm going through the divorce process. What do I need to protect? Now I'm coming into a new relationship. What do I need to protect there?
Right. And when you're talking about doing a prenup, you're talking about who inherits your things, because it's usually my property's mine and my bride's property is my bride's, and that factors in to an estate planning.
Sure does. And, the thing that we try to do at my office was we try to position people in such a way that if something bad does happen, be it death, be it divorce, whatever, that they're going to be able to weather the storm. Because the things that we've talked about today, and my buddy Andrew coming in, was a surprise.
That's a good friend. That's a good friend, right?
Something of a shock, but a very pleasant surprise. At least you didn't bring the puppet.
That's right. No,
the what? The puppet? Oh, I haven't seen the puppet.
Puppet Andrew.
What? Did you bring the puppet?
He is happily married. That will be for a different discussion there. So find me on Mind Your Business, right? I can do a plug now, and we'll talk about more puppet stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, it's a trying time, and that's why you need professionals. And with Andrew and his business, I look at the passion that he has for it, and for helping people in their business decisions. And not only that, one of the things I bought was from him was his book, Be the Lime.
Yeah,
Andrew,
I haven't read it yet.
It's good. I've heard it's good.
So.
It is good. But he, one of the things that I did was get a copy for my sister and her husband, because they have young children coming up and they're going to start in that. And they want to allocate assets and get things ready so that when college comes along, and if something happens to one of them, then, how do we make this work? So the interconnectedness is just fantastic, and I've loved working with Andrew over the years, and just a super guy. But he's right. You want to, in certain situations, make sure that your position in life is protected.
Yeah.
And so there are things that you can do in business planning, estate planning, that aid the family law practitioner, I think, in making those transitions much more smooth than what they would be if you didn't have anything.
Well, here at Winning at Divorce, we talk about putting together your winning professional team. And a lot of people think it's just one attorney, that's all you really need, or the advice of their friends or something like that. But it's not. There's a whole plethora of different professionals that really make the difference in how your divorce comes about, what happens with your assets, what sort of language or who should be the beneficiaries in your estate planning, what sort of things go into it. You and I are going to talk some more here in a bit about some more of that, but it all blends together. And making sure kids have college and how to handle the college. I mean, it's all part of dealing with a family, whether you're alive or you've passed on.
Better if you're alive.
Yeah.
Oh, life is good.
I think one thing both of you have taught me, though, is what we call the 3 Ds, and you caught touching on 2 of them, which is death, disability, and divorce. And those are the 3 things that most human adults, at least in America, we don't think that's going to happen to me. Like that other person's going to have the health problem. That person's going to have, the divorce or whatever it is. And then it happens to you. And if you're not positioned in a way, that gets very scary. So
one thing's for sure, we're all going to die.
What?
And half of us that are married are going to get divorced, right? Isn't that still the
I think it's about 60%.
Was it 60%?
Something like that.
That's first divorces.
Yeah.
And it's something like 70 or 80 for second divorce. So you've got to keep that estate up to date, right?
Yep.
And I got to keep him around then if you're telling me it's 70% and I'm on marriage here. So.
Yeah, and like third and fourth, it's like astronomical out there.
Yeah. No, the thing, and you brought this up before our dear friend comes in, one of the things that we tell people, and this is why you need a professional, because, again, the emotions are all over the place. But people come to me, okay, you're getting a divorce. I want him written out of the will.
Because it's a battle. It's like me against you thing.
It's no problem. But the question I always ask them, who's listed as your beneficiary on your life insurance policy? Yes. Beneficiary on an IRA, a 401k, and they never think about that.
No.
And the thing that...
And that's pay on death.
Yeah.
And you don't change it, it doesn't go into your estate at all.
No, and I tell them that. And they don't seem to understand. They'll say, well, I have a will. I left everything to X or Y and Z. And I said, I don't care. If you have a payable on death beneficiary designation, that trumps the will. And we see that. Well, I gave my son everything. Well, yeah, but you left your ex-wife on your...
And if they're on the insurance, then there's no money to go into an estate to pay off debts or to provide for other heirs.
Yeah.
It's not much there a lot of times for most people if they just have an insurance policy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's really important. Well, congratulations on your marriage. And tell us real quick about the book.
The book is called Be the Lime, An Insider's Guide to College. I've been teaching at the higher education level for, going on 20 years now. And it was a book that I wrote. It took me a couple years to basically say, Andrew, who's been around for 4+ decades, what would he tell somebody who's a first-time student like me going to college? And funny thing is, even though the book's been out for a little bit, it seems like every story or every piece of lime slice I have in there for students, very accurate, whether I take a little bit of a critical look at maybe like the fraternity and sororities, and here we are having more issues with them and some of the math departments. So please check it out. You can get it on Amazon.com.
Wonderful.
And she was on my podcast, another plug here for Mind Your Business. You have to check her out. So we're trying to do some love here. I'm sure your producer will cut all this out.
No.
He's saying yes, it's out.
No.
I was going to say, I'm not even looking at the camera. I'm so engrossed.
I feel like the president here.
Yeah,
like you guys put this right behind my leg so nobody can shoot at me.
You're official.
I like it. That's good. So I can just help myself to your drinks when you weren't looking. So start making eye camera.
That's great. Yeah.
Well, thank you for letting me stop by. I know it's a little bit unannounced.
I know you've got a hair appointment.
I do. I got to go look good.
He's worried that his hair is a little too long.
I apologize. I got to look good for your viewers. That's it.
Yes. Well,
and for Steve,
absolutely. No, let's not.
That's all right. So I guess then we'll take another break, right?
That
so
sounds
that
good.
way,
Thank
Andrew,
you for letting me stop by.
Thank you. So good to see you.
Thank you,
He's
everybody.
my neighbor. Good to see you.
See you around.
And since Andrew's leaving, we'll be right back. Don't leave us. We got more interesting things coming up.
Thank you for listening to Winning at Divorce with your hostess, Michelle Gregory. This is not a breakup, it's just a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages from our generous sponsors.
Hello, I'm Michelle Gregory, your Winning at Divorce coach. Divorce is the most difficult and challenging time in a person's life. Regardless as to whether the divorce is your idea or not, the process can be very frightening, stressful, and overwhelming. You don't have to go through it alone. A divorce coach can assist you whether you just need a support person to vent or help you to identify your desires, set your goals, make plans to achieve your goals, implement your plans, or direct you to the right professional so that you can win at divorce. For more information regarding how my coaching services can help you, visit hmichellegregory.com or call me at 812-339-3600 to get started on your journey towards winning at divorce.
Welcome back to Winning at Divorce, and thank you for staying tuned in with us. Don't forget to check out our website at www.hmichellegregory.com. And once again, here's our fabulous hostess, Michelle Gregory.
Oh my gosh, was that not awesome or what? That was the best. I'm so glad that Andrew came in. I'm your hostess, Michelle Gregory. I'm a family law attorney here in Bloomington and also do mediations, and I'm a divorce coach. So if you need a divorce coach, I can help with all the things that we're talking about here today and others. So just look me up on my website. Oh my gosh, was that not a surprise or what?
That was awesome.
Did you like it? I was a little worried that you might think.
No, Andrew's one of my favorite people and just a super guy. Super businessman,
good upstanding guy.
He is, and that was a real treat. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And as I told our listeners earlier in the first segment, that that's how I got started, was through him. Mm-hmm. And or did I mention that earlier? I think I did. I can't remember. Anyway. Even if I didn't, I was on Andrews, which you know about that. And that was the first time. And I just kind of got the bug. And so I thought I'm going to share that with people who need help getting their divorce. Okay, so before we were surprised, you had just told me in that other break that you wanted to give me some more details about the importance of IRAs and insurance, and you mentioned some of that just a minute ago with Andrew here. Did you want to touch base on that again?
I do, because when you're going through that period of time, and you've talked several times during our time together about assembling that professional team. Mm-hmm. It's so important to have that level-headed advice at these times, either death, divorce, whatever it may be. But when you talk about a dissolution action, it is so important to make sure that your beneficiary designations on your life insurance, mm-hmm. your IRAs, 401ks, whatever kind of pension plan you may have, mm-hmm. are changed, because most people obviously leave them to their spouse. Well, now you don't have a spouse.
Yeah. And it doesn't go into your estate if you left it on there.
No, and this is something that's hard for people to understand. Mm-hmm. They'll come to me with a will, and the will will say, I'm leaving everything to XYZ, to so-and-so. And I'll ask the question, you're divorced, did you change your beneficiary designations? Well, no, because I just said everything goes into my estate. No, mm-hmm. please. Mm-hmm. Go to your insurance agent, change your beneficiary designation, go to your financial planner, whatever, change your beneficiary designation. Well, why? I have a will. It says it's going to leave everything. Yeah, but those payable on death beneficiary designations mm-hmm. trump the will.
Right.
In fact, a lot of those things will even what we call them are non-probate assets. Mm-hmm. So if an estate goes into probate, they're not considered part of that stuff that gets distributed. And
explain a little bit more about what probate is, because most people don't have a will, and so they're going to go on probate.
Probate is the process whereby we put the will out there or the estate out there. Mm-hmm. Basically, a couple types of probate. There's, intestate and testate. Testate means the person had a will, much easier to go through the probate process. Intestacy almost always it's going to be court supervised, which is much more expensive. So
you have to hire an attorney and fight it or whatever.
It can be messy. Probate is essentially there to to provide for an orderly transition of assets, but it's also there to give creditors a chance to make a claim against the estate.
Both secure and unsecure creditors.
Yeah, and what we have to do when we open an estate is we have to publish that the estate is open. That boring section in your newspaper where you look, it says legal notices.
That no one ever reads.
Exactly. I just put one in today, in fact.
Oh, gosh.
And so it tells that an estate's been open. It also tells you've got 90 days to make a claim.
That's it? 90? Wow.
That's it. And so if you don't make a claim, that claim is waived. Now, this is why you need a professional, not only, a family law practitioner, financial planner, whatever. A few years back, I think it was the credit card companies made a real push to extend that time limit to a year.
Oh, wow. That takes a long time for people to get over and move on.
Yeah, and we referred to it as the lazy creditor statute. And we get, and folks like Jeff Hawkins and some of the other folks from the probate section of the bar got it killed
thank goodness,
before it became law. But, because we want the assets to go to the person that the testator, the decedent, the person that's died, we want their stuff to go to the people they want to get it.
Right.
And that is not going to be an ex-spouse in all probability. It's going to be your kids, your grandkids, something like that. So estate planning, going back to the first question I think you gave me when we started this time together, so to speak. Estate planning is more than just having a will. It's about developing a plan as to what happens to your assets and things of that nature when you're gone.
Right.
And that also includes a lot of things when you're living. So it's important when someone goes through a divorce to look at your whole life in a holistic way.
Right.
And
ahead of time, so those burdens aren't left on your loved ones who are grieving and trying to get through dealing with you being gone and their loss. One of the things that I also see that people forget to change the beneficiary or to readdress is their transfer on demand of their home. And I forget the deed of transfer. A lot of times they'll say, if I die, my home automatically goes to whoever.
Yeah, payable on death deed.
Right. And a lot of people forget about that. They'll execute that and complete, because it's not like an insurance policy that you pay every month or something that kind of reminds you, or a retirement account where you're constantly putting money in, or you're looking at taking money out at a certain age. That's kind of that one and done thing. And people totally skip over that one.
They do. And again, this is why you need a professional.
Right.
I know people don't like to go to attorneys.
You're expensive.
I know. So was law school.
Yes,
we come up with all these excuses.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is we don't.
Yes.
Life can really be hard sometimes.
Being proactive is usually cheaper than reacting to the situation and getting more professionals and attorney fees and costs involved.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so what we try to do is tell people, look, is there an expense? Yes, there is. Mm-hmm. Is it so great that it isn't worth it? Not by a long shot. I see people that come to me, well, I'm doing my divorce myself, and I just want to scream, no!
Oh my gosh, don't even get me on that one. Oh my gosh, because I can't tell you how many times people come back to me and say, well, we did it ourselves. And I'm thinking, well, that's why you are back to see me, and that's why now it's going to cost you X amount of dollars to fix it.
I usually figure a factor of 3. You tell people, do this, we wanted to save the money.
Yeah.
And then in a couple of years, they come back to you, well, you were right.
Yeah. It goes back to what Andrew was saying, that people don't think that it's going to happen to them.
Well, unfortunately, it does. Yeah. And, life can be a wonderful thing. You ask me about my kids and my grandkids and things of that nature. I'm head over heels in love with my granddaughter, Alice.
Aww.
But life was hard when she came into this world because she was 10 weeks premature and she was in NICU for almost 2 months.
Wow.
And was just a little over 2 pounds. There was a picture that my son-in-law took of her where he put his wedding band right next to her body. And it almost looked like a hula hoop.
Oh, my gosh.
She was so tiny.
So tiny. Oh, poor baby.
And so, there's the trips to the hospital, worrying about your kids and everything.
And sometimes when you're so worried about something else going on in your life, you can have your own accident.
Exactly.
And how many people have died rushing to the hospital? And you've got to always be prepared.
You do. But that's why we exist. I look at lawyers as being more preventative, really, than, responsive. There are things that you can do, advice that you can. You're not only, a family law practitioner, you're a mediator. Mm-hmm.
Which is the best way to go, actually. Yeah. And
so, there are things that you can tell people that they, in their rush or their emotional state, they just don't consider.
Right.
It's so tragic when people make mistakes without proper advice.
Right. Especially when you see it coming. It's like that train it's about to happen and you can't do anything about it to fix it.
So, but no, and you're exactly right. You need to check everything. Stocks, bonds, everything that you might have, depending on what the dissolution order, how things are split up. Mm-hmm. You may need to do some work on your deeds, like to the property and things like that, the real estate. But you have to look at these things. Mm-hmm. It's not pleasant. It's not fun. But these are things that really need to be addressed. And the sooner you address them, the sooner that you can move on and actually start the healing process, either from the divorce or from the death of a loved one. And like I said, enjoy those times, like when, your children tell you you're going to be a grandpa.
Yeah.
And those kinds of things. So I'm like I said, I'm very blessed and very, very happy that things have turned out the way that they have. And
well, I'm so happy you're here today.
Well, I tell you, it's always... we joke about our annual lunch.
Yes, because we're so busy.
But no, this has been a treat. And,
I get to see you twice in 1 year.
Yeah, I told Andrew, I said, oh yeah, right, and he said, well, I run into her in the hallway, and I never dreamed that I'd be sitting here talking to you. But
well, I feel blessed and honored to have you here today.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not sure you would constitute a majority, but
our listeners, our viewers are going to love you. I just know it.
But I appreciate that. Well, I hope so. But the thing about it is you've built such a successful practice and you have such a great reputation in the community. It was an honor to be invited.
Well, thank you.
To your office here to do this podcast, and I'm thrilled with it. We have such a short period of time. If you have questions about a pending divorce or family law matter, please call Michelle.
I get a plug. Thank you.
You get the plug. And, for things like estate planning and stuff like that, if you want to give us a call, we're more than happy to sit down with you, explain some things, and hopefully we can provide the advice that'll help you out.
Yep. I know Stephen Douglas will do a great job for my listeners and viewers. So, Stephen, one more time, tell people how to get a hold of you.
Our phone number is 812-369-4435. That's our office number. We can also be reached via email at sdouglaslaw@gmail.com. So SDOUGLASLAW@gmail.com.
Well, my gosh, 4 segments. Can you believe it? This has been a blast. Mm-hmm. I've had so much fun. And we had that great visitor. And thank you to all my listeners for tuning in today for Winning a Divorce. I'm your hostess, Michelle Gregory, attorney, mediator, divorce coach. And remember, being a winner doesn't mean always getting your way or getting everything in a divorce or in a will. It means doing the right thing. It means giving and taking and compromising. So do the right thing, be a winner, and stay tuned and come back and see us again with Winning at Divorce.
This has been Winning at Divorce, a podcast to empower and assist you through the divorce processes and stages using stories and tips. We hope this podcast has shed some light on the main concerns that people face when going through a divorce. And remember, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. If you need assistance, please seek professional advice from a licensed attorney or other professionals in your area. For more information about our services, please visit www.hmichellegregory.com.
Hello, I'm Michelle Gregory, your Winning at Divorce coach. Divorce is the most difficult and challenging time in a person's life. Regardless as to whether the divorce is your idea or not, the process can be very frightening, stressful, and overwhelming. You don't have to go through it alone. A divorce coach can assist you whether you just need a support person to vent or help you to identify your desires, set your goals, make plans to achieve your goals, implement your plans, or direct you to the right professionals so that you can win at divorce. For more information regarding how my coaching services can help you, visit hmichellegregory.com or call me at 812-339-3600 to get started on your journey towards winning at divorce.